About 3 years ago, I was deep into urban exploration. Sneaking into old, forgotten places, abandoned schools, shut down hospitals, forgotten subway tunnels. My best friend Jake was just as into it as I was. We weren't doing it for clout or anything. We genuinely loved the eerie silence of places time had forgotten. One Friday evening, Jake messaged me a Reddit thread titled, "The Lost Mall. No one talks about it, but it's still there." It wasn't just a post. It was a full rabbit hole. Comments from former employees, rumors about mysterious disappearances, and even a blurry photo of the mall's entrance from someone who claimed they barely escaped. Jake and I were hooked. The location wasn't even pinned properly, the directions were vague, but the mystery was too good to resist. That Saturday, we packed up, flashlights, backup batteries, walkie-talkies, and a GoPro, and set off to find the place. The drive took us almost 2 hours out of town, past factories and empty roads. Eventually, we came across a cracked service road, barely visible behind thick overgrown trees. The GPS lost signal. We almost gave up until we saw it. Behind the trees, a huge parking lot sat sunken and cracked, swallowed partially by nature. The mall looked like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. It was massive but silent. No graffiti, no visible squatters, just stillness. The front doors were boarded up, every window was covered. But after circling the building, we found a rusted service entrance with one hinge broken off. We exchanged a look, switched on our flashlights, and stepped inside. The entrance. The first thing that hit us was the smell. A thick, rotting, moldy odor like damp carpets and something else. Something metallic. The place was dark, the only light coming through cracks in the boarded windows. As we moved in deeper, we passed by old mall maps, barely readable from water damage. I remember one sign said, "Northwood Galleria, grand opening 1999. Jake chuckled and said, "Guess the grand closing wasn't far behind." Inside, the stores were still there. Shattered glass cases, hanging signs. A toy store still had action figures scattered on the floor. We walked into what used to be a clothing outlet. Mannequins half-dressed, some with missing heads. I remember filming it, thinking how weird it was that this place wasn't completely looted. Everything felt too untouched. The food court. After about 20 minutes of exploring, we reached the food court. The lights overhead were all busted, but moonlight poured in through a giant crack in the roof. The tables were still arranged, though dusty and decayed. One section looked too clean, a Chinese food counter still with a faded menu up. Trays were stacked neatly. One had a plastic fork still sitting on it. We started whispering, even though we were sure we were alone. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. Not rats, not animals. Heavy, slow human footsteps from the upper floor. Jake turned to me and mouthed, "Did you hear that?" I nodded. We both stood frozen. The steps continued, deliberate like someone pacing. Then silence, and then faster footsteps, now clearly moving toward the escalators. We aimed our flashlights upward. The escalator was still, dusty, dead. But at the very top, something moved. The figure. There was someone standing at the top of the escalator, not moving, not speaking, just watching us. We couldn't make out a face. The figure was wrapped in something dark, like a hoodie or a long coat. We called out, "Hey, you okay?" No answer, just stillness. Then the escalator, dead for years, jerked to life. The sound of old gears grinding echoed through the mall. The figure didn't move, but the escalator carried them slowly downward, step by step. It was like something out of a nightmare. Jake whispered, "Nope," and grabbed my arm. We turned to run, but the door we had come from, the broken service entrance, slammed shut behind us, hard, loud enough to shake the floor. We hadn't touched it. The escape? We panicked. I yanked at the door, but it wouldn't budge. From behind us, the sound of the escalator groaning grew louder. Jake turned and said, "It's almost at the bottom." There was another hallway near the food court that we hadn't noticed before. Dark, narrow, leading toward what looked like an old maintenance area. We bolted down it without thinking. Every step echoed like a drum beat. Behind us, I could swear I heard a second set of footsteps now. Heavier, quicker, almost running. We pushed through a door marked "Staff Only" and found ourselves in the boiler room. It was pitch black, no windows, pipes lined the ceiling. Jake pulled out his backup flashlight and we scanned the room. One of the back walls was completely blackened, like it had been burned, and carved into the soot with some kind of sharp object were the words, "You don't leave." Just then, we heard a door creak open behind us. We didn't wait. We found an old ladder that led to a vent shaft and crawled through it, not even caring where it led. We could barely breathe, dust choking our throats, but it eventually dumped us out near the back loading dock. We didn't stop running until we were back in the car. Aftermath. We didn't talk on the way home. Later that night, I uploaded the footage to my laptop. Most of it was what we expected: empty stores, broken mannequins, moldy food trays. But at the very end of the last clip, right as the escalator starts moving, you can hear something. It's low, garbled, like someone whispering through static. I enhanced the audio, thinking it might just be feedback, but what it said, I'll never forget it. "Don't leave yet. You're part of the mall now." I deleted everything, every photo, every file. Jake never brought it up again. We never went urban exploring again, and I still have nightmares of that figure on the escalator, coming down, step by step, waiting for me to come back. Before you move on to the next terrifying story, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends. Your support keeps this horror journey alive. About 2 years ago, I got really into urban exploration. Not the kind you see with big YouTubers trespassing million-dollar homes. I'm talking about decaying buildings, places that time left behind. My cousin Ryan was my go-to partner. We were both in college, both bored out of our minds, and both drawn to the creepy excitement of stepping into places we weren't supposed to be. We'd done it all: abandoned houses, a burned-down hotel, even a flooded train tunnel. But the one place we always joked about was an old hospital downtown. It was sort of a local legend. People claimed it had been closed since the late 80s due to a gas leak that mysteriously killed off several patients and staff. But there were always rumors it was something else: illegal experiments, maybe even government testing. One Friday night, Ryan sent me a message. "Bro, found something legit. That old hospital? It's still there, and I found a way in." He dropped a pin and a blurry photo of the back wall. I didn't even think twice. Finding the hospital. That Sunday afternoon, we drove into the city in Ryan's old Jeep. It was cloudy, gray skies threatening rain. We parked on the edge of an industrial lot and made our way through a collapsed brick wall, mostly covered in vines. The building itself was huge, 5 stories tall, with shattered windows and broken security lights. The rusted sign at the front read, "West Hill Memorial Hospital." It looked abandoned, but not empty. The main doors were sealed with steel plates. Ryan had read online that there was a side window near the loading bay that had been broken years ago and never boarded up. Sure enough, after 10 minutes of circling, we found it, barely big enough to crawl through. I went first, brushing off a dead bird and a crushed Pepsi can as I landed inside. Ryan followed, and just like that, we were in. Inside the hospital, the smell hit us instantly. Mildew, rot, and something chemical. It was like stepping into an old wound. We were in the supply hall. Old gurneys pushed up against the walls, rusted IV poles hanging with dry bags, some of them still labeled. We started filming with our phones, documenting everything. I remember thinking, why hasn't this place been torn down yet? As we moved through the corridors, we saw surgery rooms with shattered lights, a maternity ward with empty bassinets, graffiti messages like "help us" and "they never left," probably left by other explorers trying to spook people. But then, something odd. At the end of one hallway, tucked behind a fallen cabinet, we found an old elevator. It looked untouched. The panel still had buttons for 5 floors and one more. A single, glowing red B at the bottom. Ryan pressed the B button as a joke. To our shock, the elevator dinged quietly and opened. Inside, the light flickered, but it was on. We both looked at each other, unsure. Ryan laughed nervously and said, "Maybe it runs on a separate generator or something." I didn't answer. After a few seconds of silence, he stepped in and said, "Come on. Quick peek. We'll be fine." I joined him. The doors closed. The elevator shuddered, then descended. Basement level. When the doors opened, the atmosphere completely shifted. The hallway was darker than anything upstairs. The floor tiles were uncracked, clean, Too clean. The lights overhead flickered but stayed on. It didn't look abandoned at all. Metal stretchers were lined up along the walls, filing cabinets filled with papers, a cart of what looked like surgical tools, all shiny as if they were still in use. We walked slowly, cautiously. At the far end was a locked steel door with a small window in it, the kind used in secure psych wards. As we approached, I swear I saw movement inside. Something pale moved past the window, quick, like it didn't want to be seen. Ryan froze. "You saw that, right?" I nodded slowly. We turned back. The elevator was gone. Doors closed. Call button off. No red light anymore. Trapped, we panicked. Ryan hit the button. No response. I banged on the metal doors. Nothing. Then we noticed something chilling. There were no stairs on this level. It was just one long hallway. We started back toward the locked door at the end, thinking maybe someone was inside. Maybe another explorer. Maybe someone stuck like us. As we approached, the overhead lights began to shut off. One by one, from far behind us, moving closer. With every light that clicked off, the hallway grew darker and colder. We turned and ran, blindly opening the first door we found, an old storage room. Inside was pitch black. We used our phone lights and closed the door behind us, jamming a piece of pipe into the handle. We waited. Outside, we heard slow footsteps, something dragging across the floor. Then, a breath, right at the door, and a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." The room of jars. Inside the room were hundreds of glass jars, some broken, some sealed, all covered in dust. Inside each jar was something preserved. Fingers, eyes, even what looked like a baby's hand floating in brown liquid. Ryan was shaking. I was nauseous. We needed to get out. Then we heard another sound, the creaking of the elevator doors. Opening. We didn't wait. We pushed the pipe free and bolted. The escape. The hallway was dark now. Only the elevator was lit, glowing red from the inside. We ran full speed, dreading that it might close before we made it, but the door stayed open, waiting. As we stepped in, the lights flickered violently, and for a split second, I saw something inside with us. A reflection in the steel wall, a tall, thin figure standing in the back corner. But when I turned around, it was gone. We didn't breathe until we were back on the ground floor. Aftermath. We climbed out the same broken window, ran to the Jeep, and drove off in silence. Ryan didn't speak the whole ride. That night, I reviewed the footage. Everything seemed fine, until the basement. There at the storage room door, you could hear the whisper again. Only this time, it was clearer. "You came too deep. You're not going back. I deleted it all." Ryan doesn't answer my messages anymore. He moved out of town 3 months later, but I still live near that hospital. And every night, just before 3 a.m., I hear a soft ding from somewhere in the distance, like an elevator arriving again.